Hi there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, a teacher with the Demon, and with me is Nathan Fox, one of the founders of LSATdemon.com and the weekly podcast Thinking LSAT. Nate, today we've got an email from Airplane Alice. Subject is aviation law.
Alice says, "Hi guys, I'm very interested in aviation law because the airline industry is something I have always wanted to go into. So I want to tie together that and my passion to study law. I'm curious if you had any insight on aviation law certificates because only North Dakota and Mississippi offer them."
Nate,
That is so
what
interesting.
what's an aviation law certificate?
I mean, yeah, it is kind of funny because, I mean, you're not talking about does UND have a law school? I don't think they do they? Maybe they do. I'm going to go to lsatdemon.com/scholarships
They
and
they do
oh,
have a law school.
okay. So the reason why UND, this must be what Alice is talking about because UND is, by the way, one of the only schools that offers a bachelor's in aviation. The reason why
Okay.
I know that is because my best friend from childhood is a pilot who knew early on, somehow he magically knew that he wanted to fly airplanes. And he actually he got his bachelor's from UND so he could study aviation and is an airline pilot now.
All right.
And it's awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, although he hates it, it's like glorified bus driver. He has to be away from home for long hours, but he makes a good living. He has amazing benefits.
Sure.
There are lots of things to recommend. In fact, that was the first thing that I was thinking was, hey, Alice, you could make a pretty good career
The
out of being an airline pilot.
the pandemic devastated the pilot supply because tons of pilots retired early during like forced layoffs or furloughs and forced early retirements because nobody was traveling, and so they cut off, I think it was something like 23% of the pilot workforce. And now there's just a desperate shortage, and you can make really good money as an airline pilot right now. They are so desperate for airline pilots.
Yeah. And that's where I'm like, hey, Alice, if you're going to go to UND, why don't you just like get a bachelor's in aviation instead? Why don't you try to work your way up the pilot ranks instead of instead of trying to be an aviation lawyer? I've got a pretty strong suspicion that if you did want to go be a lawyer for Boeing or a lawyer for United Airlines, I got a pretty strong suspicion that, their lawyers come from big law firms. They hire big law firms to do their law to the extent that they have in-house counsel, which I'm sure they do. The bigger you are, the more likely it is that you just take some of your legal stuff in-house. But those are going to be people who came from big law, big schools. I cannot imagine that having an aviation law certificate makes you a more attractive candidate than, for example, somebody who went to University of Minnesota Law School. University of Minnesota, I just picked Minnesota because it's close to North Dakota, and Minnesota is a higher ranked law school. If you go get a JD from University of Minnesota with no aviation certificate, I still think that you're a much likelier to work in aviation law than you are to go to some nowhere low ranked law school and get a dorky certificate in aviation law.
Low-ranked law schools will use this type of a marketing gimmick of their specialties.
Yes.
Number one ranked in health law. Number one ranked in energy law, in environmental, and like you pick your specialty that they know people have a niche interest in, and they'll say, come here and we'll let you get the certificate. And that's a marketing ploy that does not pay off in employability. I don't remember that there's a program that was like a school that was like in the 50s that one of our demon team members was like, yeah, they just kept talking about how great their health law is. And I'm like, are you really telling me that if I was to go to Harvard and work with like Harvard Medical School,
Yeah.
that I'm not going to have exposure to health law at
Pretty
Harvard?
sure you're talking about my alma mater, which is UC Hastings. They've got this like relationship with UCSF Medical School, kind of. And so, but what that's going to actually entail is like one or two classes that might be taught across, like jointly with the
Right.
medical school. There might be like one dorky clinic program or something. And then, oh, wow, yeah, we're number 7 in health law. But look, right across the bay is UC Berkeley. And surely if I'm United Health or whatever, and I'm trying to hire lawyers, I'm going to be far more interested in Berkeley lawyers or Stanford lawyers than I am in a UC Hastings lawyer who has this dumb certification. I really think that Josh nailed it with this is marketing bullshit. Both of these schools, by the way, that Alice mentions, North Dakota, Mississippi, these are well into the 100s. They're very regional law schools. They don't have big law placement, very much big law placement, if any big law placement. And the type of law that it sounds like you're wanting to do is, in-house counsel at big airlines. And I think you've got to go the big law route if that's something that you're going to actually do. It's not like you're going to just go to one of these schools and then hang your shingle as an aviation lawyer. I mean, I just don't really see that path making much sense. I could be totally wrong, Alice, and I really hope that you email daily@lsatdemon.com if you have information that suggests otherwise. But I'd be really interested in the actual job outcomes from lawyers who did this certificate program.
You should also like find out, because how much does in-house counsel at Boeing even do along like, I mean, how much are they 100, do you have ones that are 100% aviation regulations, right? With the FAA, and like is that FAA? Am I right about that?
Yeah, FAA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100% with FAA regulations, or are they like 10% FAA each, and most of them are doing contracts and employment law, right? Like that's what most in-house counsels are doing. And so I would go look into what these employment outcomes, not just from these schools, but in this industry looks like, because I think it might be more difficult than you're kind of anticipating to combine these two interests.
Yeah. It's cool that you're interested in the airline industry. I do know that lifestyle can be really cool. I mean, the travel benefits are just amazing. The ability to fly standby on any airline anytime is awesome. And so I would encourage you to go get a job with the airlines. I think flight attendant jobs are actually pretty good. Pilot jobs are really good. There are pilot training programs at a lot of airlines, because as Josh said, they're so desperate for pilots that, Alice, you could go get into one of these, instead of going to law school, go through one of their pilot training programs and become an airline pilot. It'd be awesome. And oh, by the way, once you do that, you'll have plenty of time to read in the cockpit, and you could begin your JD once you're actually an airline pilot.
Online program in the cockpit of a plane. Love it.
Yeah. Anything more for Alice?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Thanks, Alice. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you would like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.